Alright guys, so I want to show you a couple of things here. Now, we're approaching the 24-hour mark. In fact, it'll be 1:15 this afternoon. It'll be that. And right now, we are not looking at that. We are looking at right around 11:35, 11:40. So, we're just shy of the 24-hour mark. And you can see here, I stirred it this morning before I left, but I was gone for about an hour. And you can see that this needs to be agitated again. This is what I was talking about. You want to never ever see this. You don't want to see it settled. You want all these chemicals mixed together. And when I do let it settle at the end, it'll be because I want it to settle so I can pour off all this crap on the top. Up until then, I'm just busy agitating. You can see the color of this changes too. It's gone to a bit greener color, a bit darker color, a bit more the color of the dead metal here that's coming out. You see this? It used to look like gold up along the side here, hardcore when I dragged it along. Now you can actually see some gold dust. And we're getting close to 24 hours here. So, we're going to pull out some of these pieces, and you're going to see what I see, and that is mostly that this is depopulated. Now, if you look down here in the corner, you'll still see there's still a gold corner here that's not gone yet. But the others on that corner are gone. And if you look on this side, these are still going. But I expected them to take the longest. However, if we look here, you can see this still has a fair bit of stuff on it, little tiny stuff. But I have pulled some of the burners that I talked about previously, and if I didn't mention those, which I know I did, but if you didn't pay attention to those, some of the material I put in here is actually, I keep calling them burners, but they're come out of vaporizers, and they're not actually the burners. See, look at this. These aren't even really depopulated yet. So after 24 hours, we're looking like it's really not doing all that much here, you might think. And yet, when I look at some of these pieces, we're going to go to another method now, and I'm going to go to the fork. And you can see just by the color of this stuff that a lot of the gold is removed. And when you really look, I'm seeing this contact here, which I suspect is actually solid, is not seeming to be flaking at all. But what I'm going to go after here are a couple of things. Apparently I'm getting absolutely nothing in every one, which means it's bad. It means I have it all. Now see this? This is what these burners start to look like. These little contacts. I'm going to try and fish one on its own out for you, just so you guys can see what that looks like. I'm going to dry it off. I'm going to wipe that. I'm going to wipe this burner off on my pants just to see if there's any gold flake left behind. Not that I see. Maybe a tiny little bit, but look at this. This is basically done now. This is looking depopulated, but I want to take a look at it at my eye. And it actually doesn't. It looks to me like this has changed color, and there's a spot here where it seems to be coming up. But even holding that in my hand is tingling. Guys, if you're going to do this, you don't actually have to wear gloves, but I do recommend it. It'll dry out your skin. I do have a pair of gloves, voici là, just so that I can do this very job. When I do my transfer and my cleaning of all these materials, I will be using that. Now see this big gold contact on the far left? That is one solid chunk of gold. I've got about half a dozen of those in there. Some of the traces are coming off, as you can see. And when I look at some of the rams, I see that most of the traces are gone. You can see those have been lifted right off. Look at that. Isn't that great? So it is working. It's just a matter of the time that's involved, and I will tell you that the time involved is substantial. I mean, just in terms of the fact that I agitate this about every 20 minutes for about 2 minutes. Means that it takes a really long time. Now, I also want to cover the fact that there is tons of salt in this. I used way too much salt. What you should use is put in your vinegar first, then your peroxide, then just enough salt to activate the solution. But by adding more, it meant that all I ever had to do to reactivate it was re-stir it. And now we're at the point, you see that? It just changed the color of the water when I stirred that hydrogen peroxide in. And now we're starting to see a little bit of a white bubble on the surface. That's a good thing. You see those foils too? That's a beautiful thing. So, we're going to add just a little more of that, just to make sure that we have enough to do our duty. And then I may have to reactivate it with a little salt. But I should be putting a tiny little bit in, you might think. And you're probably right. So I'm going to do that right now and just go a tiny little bit. Like this much. Just the tiniest little bit, because I've already got salt in here, right? And as soon as I mix that in, I see that it started to foam a little bit on the surface, and that has reactivated my solution from the look of it. Look at that. See the foam I'm getting? Watch this. You can see the foam getting thicker, and you can see all the bubbles in it. That is what you want to see. That is the sign that this is working. So one last look at some of our content. You can see this one burner is now silver. So let's get this one out if we can and see if this is one that's depopulated, so I know what they look like when they're done. This is going to be really interesting. I'm actually really excited to see this. Nope. It looks silver, and it does appear to be silver. I'm checking it now to see what is there, and I do see a tiny little bit of gold come off it. See if I can track it there, but I'll put it back in the container. And this is looking very silver, guys, as opposed to gold, which means this is looking like this is successfully stripped. That's what this is looking like to me. So I'm going to put this aside and hold that as an example of one that's fully stripped, because before it comes off, they turn that dark color, and it looked like it was stripped at that moment. And you can still see there's a tiny little bit of gold in here, it looks like, up underneath the rim, but the rest is pretty much gone. And I'm guessing that is what they are all going to look like when they're done, which is what I was expecting, back to the base metal. So this is a good sign. This is not only working, but it actually seems to be working very efficiently. So I have given it its thorough agitation. I have restarted the process, and you can tell that by the fact that you are making a little bit of foam, and you don't want to use too much salt. If you use a lot of salt, you get a thicker foam, you might think, but that's not necessarily true. It's the hydrogen peroxide and the salt together. So you have to be very careful and not use too much of either one. That time I put in the perfect amount of salt, but I put in just a tiny too much hydrogen peroxide. When you put in too much salt over the course of the batch, you will find this. It builds up at the bottom. But this is useless salt. It's already had its action run through, basically. And I might lose a lot trying to get rid of that salt out of here. Luckily, I can do warm water rinses, which should help me minimize my loss and keep this working. And take a look at that, guys. That is a little piece right there of gold flake, I think. Yeah, it sure does appear to have some gold on it, but it's also got some other crap on the back. And this is where chemically clean comes in. Like, I really don't want to just have it dirty like this. Like, this is going to be really, really dirty flake when I pull it out because of the fact that I did it this method. But I'm trying to see how good a reaction I can get and how quickly I can get it done. And the facts are two things. One, I can get a really quick reaction. We're not quite 24 hours yet, and the batch is almost done. It might not be quite 24 hours. In fact, I'd be really excited if I got it as quick as 48 hours. For gold recovery into flake, that's epic. That's the longest part usually, in a lot of ways. And I mean, you know, that's a big deal for me. So the fact that I'm able to do this is pretty exciting. As you can see, we've got a nice thick foam. And next time I'll just add a tiny little bit of hydrogen peroxide, a tiny little bit of salt, and the smallest amount I can manage, basically a couple of drops. No, I'm going to go maybe 100 mils of hydrogen peroxide, and I'm going to do a pinch of salt. And that's it, just a pinch. That's all I put in there this time, and that was more than enough. But it's partly because I have salt in the bottom. I want to use up all that salt during the next 24 hours. So by the end of this, I actually expect this to be cleaner than it is right now. But the proof will be in the pudding. So I've given you my method, I've given you how it's working, and I will continue to share as the process moves along. Right now, my mind is turning to recovery and figuring out exactly how I'm going to recover all this. I will get to that when we cross it. Keith out.